Welcome back to Honored Madman. Today we're going to be talking about Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, specifically the first part of the game before you get to the Tower of Gods. But along with that, I want to talk about how more than anything else, there's one song in this soundtrack that sort of embodies the first half of this game. And look, it's no secret that Wind Waker is known for having one of the best Legend of Zelda soundtracks of all time, at least in my humble opinion. But there's one song I think that stands out more than all the rest. And yeah, music is subjective, so I understand that not everybody will like this soundtrack or even this song. But in my experience, most people like to. Listen to it. I really like how a lot of the songs in this soundtrack seem to be inspired, at least in some small part, by Irish music or Irish folk music. Or at least that's what comes to mind for me. I'm no Anthony Fantano, I can't explain the technical reasons why a song is good, but I can attempt to explain why it works so well with the story and the themes of the game. So this song isn't just good because it's good. Listen to it. It is pretty good, isn't it? No, what makes this song so special in my opinion and so important to the game and the story is the subtle feeling of hope and optimism that it gives off. When you first arrive at Dragon Roost Isle in the game, Link has basically had his whole life turned upside down. His sister gets kidnapped on his birthday, he has to sail with a bunch of pirates to a forsaken fortress and attempt to Metal Gear Solid his way in. He even manages to almost free his sister, only for him to get caught by a giant bird, showed to Ganon, and tossed into the sea like he's nothing. I can't imagine what Ganon thought though when he saw a kid dressed in that outfit had infiltrated his base of operations. What a Dr. Evil moment of him to just toss him into the sea. I'm sure he assumed Link would die, but why not just, kill him yourself? Sure, he probably doesn't think that this Link is a threat to him or is some kind of reincarnation of the previous guy that whooped his ass, but why even take the chance? Anyway, I'm getting off topic. But you're saved by the Boat King, and you're taken to this place called Dragon Roost Island, where Ganondorf has sent a Mulgara to corrupt the great dragon Valoo, mainly by fucking with his tail, which sent him into periodic fits of rage, rendering him unapproachable by the very people he'd sworn to protect, the Rito, while also threatening their way of life. See, Ritos originally evolved from the Zora people who were fish, and while their physical forms changed into something much more bird-like, the ability of their flight was never something that was inborn. Valoo is a wind spirit and the guardian of the skies, and when a Rito reaches a certain age, they sort of have this rite of passage where they go see Valoo and get a scale from him that then grants them the ability of flight. I imagine this was possible due to Valoo's status as a wind spirit. Before they reached that age, the Rito were forced to use grappling hooks. But look at me already getting off topic. So Link and the Boat King head to Dragon Roost Island. Well, technically they go to Windfall Island first so they can get a sail to make it to Dragon Roost Island, but they eventually pull up there and you see the quaint little island for what it is, and you hear that song for the first time. And you start getting to know the Rito and you start helping them out, and you're like, you know what? All is not lost. You have a casual conversation with a wind god, and you progress through the dungeon, make friends with Medley, learn the finer complexities of metal sorting. You basically save a very unique and important culture during a crisis that threatened their very existence. And think about it, the Rito are the most organized race that we have in Wind Waker. They're also the only reason anybody in the Great Sea gets their mail, so it's a very important race of people. Or rather, bird people. And I think this song conveys that really well. Like this gradual rebuilding of hope and optimism, as corny as that is to say, it manages to not be corny in this situation. And then when it's time to eventually leave Dragon Roost Island, you hear the song, and you're filled with determination and hope that, you know what, yeah, you can actually pull off this hero thing. At least from Link's perspective. Feelings as the player may vary. We really see how important it was for Link to help these people, especially when contrasted with what becomes of Greatfish Isle. So after departing Dragon Roost Island and dealing with the crisis in the Forest Haven, The Boat King then directs Link to go to a place called Greatfish Isle, the home of the legendary water spirit Jabon, who's really just a big fish, honestly. But when Link pulls up there, they quickly realize that something's wrong. The island that was once presumably a thriving colony of maybe fishermen or maybe just regular people has been utterly destroyed and rendered into a ruin of just a few little pieces of land crudely sticking out of the water. I would have to assume this isn't where the fishermen lived, and that it was probably just a colony of humans, judging by the boats and rafts lying around. At first I thought maybe the island was an inaccessible cove or had some type of inaccessible cove similar to Mother and Child Island, and that perhaps Ganon just cracked it open and that's why, we get the ruin that we get. But there's some visual beaches that I imagine were there before the destruction, and like I already said, the boats. So I'm assuming this was just like a regular island colony, a thriving one or somewhat thriving one, which there really aren't very many of in the Great Sea, and now this one's gone, just completely wiped off the board. It's like walking through the island version of a ghost town, which gives the island a really foreboding atmosphere, especially with all the rain. And outside of monsters, it's completely barren, with no friendly life to be found besides the Goron traveling merchant who shows up and the Korok who is, I believe, at the top of one of the land spires that the island has become. But yeah, for what used to be a thriving community, there's not much going on anymore here. And it doesn't really appear that there's any surviving signs of civilization, so maybe they were like an underwater type of thing. Like maybe the island itself acted as maybe it was just a big rock that acted as a shell that protected the underwater community beneath it. Maybe it was something like Mother and Child Island, like where the Great Fairy lives. Maybe the community wasn't underwater and was more like that. It was just a hollowed out mountain with people living inside it, and then Ganon came along and sundered it, or he ordered his big squids to do it. But Jabon, being a massive fish, managed to avoid this. So it's not exactly uncommon knowledge that Wind Waker was originally going to have 2 more dungeons. We don't really know how far along they came, or when exactly they were going to be placed. Me personally, I always thought that they were going to happen after the Wind and Earth temples, so like post Tower of Gods at the very least. Like, I was always under the impression that the 2 cut dungeons were the Volcano Island and the Ice Dragon Head Island, just because they were so unique and you got like specialized, items and equipment from them. And people will say, well, we already technically had a fire dungeon, but the inside of that volcano could have just not been fire if they wanted it. You know what I mean? They made it a generic lava cave in game. Well, not super generic, obviously. It does have its uniqueness to it, but you get what I'm saying. It's also much smaller than the Ice Dragon one too, so to me, it's very possible that the original interior of that volcano might not have ever been really that volcanic. Maybe you fell super deep and it was some underground Earth-themed dungeon or something, a spirit, who knows? And the ice one would have been perfect. I mean, Twilight Princess had an ice dungeon. I always liked Snow Peak Manor, not because it was some amazing dungeon. I mean, it is one of my favorites, but it also has a great atmosphere and great soundtrack as well, and I love the Yeti couple. But yeah, I always thought it was probably one of those 2 islands or both of them that were cut dungeons, personally. But a good amount of people seems to think Greatfish Isle was originally intended to have been a similar situation to Dragon Roost Island and the Forest Haven. You show up, the ancient spirit needs your help, you help them by dealing with their dungeon, and then they give you the pearl. But here's the thing, both of the previous pearls seem to follow a trend of matching the environment of the dungeon that you have to conquer to get them. For example, the goddess Din is usually associated with fire, so her corresponding pearl also happens to be red, and the dungeon you have to conquer to get the pearl is very much a fire-based temple. The same goes for the Forest Temple and Farore's Pearl. Of course, this is back when Farore still had a wind affinity, but now in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom it seems to have taken on a lightning affinity. I guess that's the natural evolution from wind or whatever, but I mean, I would consider the Forbidden Woods a wind temple, but I guess it's more of like a plant or grass temple or, something to that effect. Because the actual wind temple is the one you do in the back half of the game with Makar. But wind is still in those games, but Ritos have it, which admittedly makes more sense. But I'm digressing. So it stands to reason that acquiring Nehru's Pearl, the blue one, would involve dealing with a water temple of some kind. And that's exactly something I don't think would have worked out too well in Wind Waker. I mean, the game is very much a water-based game, and therefore I don't see the idea of a water temple working, but I'm sure they could have made it work, and maybe they did intend that, but narratively speaking, what happens with Greatfish Isle is very important, in my opinion at least, in my humblest of humble opinions. It's very important that we see the level of destruction that Ganondorf can call forth at the snap of a finger. Because while he does manage to stay one step ahead of the player and the Boat King in this game, we don't get much in the way of displays of what his power is actually capable of. You know, like just how devastating they can be. And I think the utter annihilation of Greatfish Isle in pursuit of Jabon is the perfect example of that. Because like I said, this Ganondorf is a couple steps ahead of the player. He's already got an ace up his sleeve, having killed the sages of Wind and Earth, rendering the Master Sword powerless against him. He's already done all that by this point. What's additionally telling about this is that Ganondorf is on to what they're doing. Which, sure, that's not surprising, but I bet he's regretting not killing that kid when he had the chance, right? So now he has to resort to attempting to kill Jabon and just, destroying the Blue Pearl? Or at the very least, just keeping Link and the Boat King from getting it so they can activate the Tower of Gods and go down into Hyrule and take the sword, which, again, Ganondorf has already rendered powerless. It shows that the destruction of Greatfish Isle was a desperate act of Ganondorf's because he wanted to slow down the progress of this upcoming hero that he most definitely should have killed when he had the chance. Luckily for him, he'll live to regret it. But look, I'm getting off topic. A lot of people have said that it would have been more impactful if we had gotten a chance to see what Greatfish Isle was like before it was destroyed, but we already have Dragon Roost Island to show us a race of people whose way of life was threatened because of an attempted corruption of their guardian spirit by Ganondorf, who Link managed to save due to his timely arrival, and of course, heroic capabilities. And I think us having zero chance to see or save Greatfish Isle makes Link's actions at the Forest Haven and Dragon Roost Isle more impactful. This is reinforced by that Rito postman showing up to relay a message to Link from Volu, the spirit he had helped previously, letting him know that Jabon escaped safely. Now I don't think this is any coincidence, but at the same time the Rito can fly and this might have just been a convenient choice. This made me see Greatfish Isle and Dragon Roost Island and the events that transpired at them as a two sides of the same coin type of situation, or two possible outcomes of the same situation, you know, with and without Link's intervention. But the postman's presence is a nice reminder of that time you didn't show up too late. So whether or not Greatfish Isle was intended to have been a dungeon, I think it works way better as the sequence we got in the game. Because not only does it break the repetition of the first two dungeons and those two whole parts of the game, it's just super fucking unique. Yeah, I know Twilight Princess has a smaller rain sequence, but that one's a lot more depressing and sad. This one is a lot cooler in my opinion, very atmospheric. Think about how the game, or rather the sea, changes after the isle is destroyed, despite that postman Quill saying that everywhere else has clear skies. I mean, clearly this guy isn't too well informed or is just blind or something, because it's storming everywhere. Ganondorf clearly holds some kind of dominion over the weather. Perhaps this weakens him or slows down his power regen, I'm not sure, but he clearly has some weather manipulation abilities. One of the main reasons I don't think Greatfish Isle was ever meant to be a dungeon is just because of how good this little subplot thing is. It's got the return of the pirates, the Windfall villagers' hilarious reactions to them, reuniting with your buddy Nico on the pirate ship, and of course my personal favorite, the bomb shop robbery. Just an overall iconic sequence, and it doesn't end there. But all of this happens because of the destruction of Greatfish Isle. Well, also some credit should go to Postman Quill, the guy that gave us the news of Jabon's survival. See, when he was looking for Link, he ran into the pirates and he told them everything that happened, including that Jabon fled to Outset Island with the pearl. He figured they would help him, but they immediately cut out to Outset Isle and tried to break down the seawall that Jabon was hiding behind. At the end of the day, who knows what the pirates wanted to do with the pearl? I mean, they probably just thought it was a valuable piece of treasure, or perhaps Tetra just wanted to keep Ganondorf's hands off of it, you know? There seems to be no love lost between her pirates and the crew of the Forsaken Fortress. But yeah, the pirates couldn't break down the seawall with their cannonballs, so they headed out to Windfall Island to rob the bomb store, which in turn allows Link to rob their bomb stash after they've robbed the store. Look, this sequence is probably one of my favorite parts of the game. I mean, the stormy sea, the atmosphere, the music, which is really good and also serves as a nice contrast to Dragon Roost Isle's music. The interactions with the pirates are also, as I mentioned, some of the best in the game right here. Tetra basically allows Link to get a head start, and Nico allows Link to steal the bombs. It's just all of it wouldn't be possible without the relationships he built earlier on in the game with Nico and Tetra. It's just a really satisfying sequence in my opinion. I mean, you get to go back to Outset Island, visit all the villagers, talk to Orca again. You also visit the grandma again, you realize she's sick and she won't even wake up to see you, so you have to go get her a ferry. And last but not least, you get to use the cannon for the first time in the game right here. Arguably the coolest attachment to the Boat King. I just really think this whole part of the game really embodies the spirit of Wind Waker, and none of that would have been possible without the destruction of Greatfish Isle and the successes at Dragon Roost Island. But that's just me. We can speculate a little bit for how Ganondorf destroyed Greatfish Isle. I've always thought that he used one of those giant krakens, but I saw this interesting theory a while back that basically amounts to he summoned all of the giant krakens, they destroyed Greatfish Isle together, and then they spread like the four winds, and one of them just went into some sort of standby mode, because if you go like a square over, there's, I believe, like a 12-eyed giant kraken squid. Shit, maybe it was just him that destroyed it. That makes perfect sense to me. I mean, he's right there. At the end of the day, though, I guess it doesn't really matter how it was destroyed, just that it was destroyed. And we know at least some of the people at Windfall Island used to trade with the people of Greatfish Isle, so its destruction is definitely going to have some impact on the Great Sea. Possible food shortages and whatnot, considering that there's said to be no fish in the sea. Well, besides the fishmen that I already mentioned, and of course the shark-like Gyorgs, or Gyorgs, or whatever they're called. You know, the purple sharks that attack you while you're sailing around? Shit, come to think of it, those are probably what most of the fishermen are out there eating and searching for. I know, fun fact, according to my Legend of Zelda encyclopedia, Greatfish Isle was Lake Hylia before the Great Flood. Now, I don't know how that lines up geography-wise, but it's never really mattered before. Just an interesting tidbit I felt worth mentioning. I seem to have lost sight of my initial goal of this video, but I think the spirit of it is still there. The importance of what happens at Dragon Roost Isle and, of course, its song are further highlighted by what happens to Greatfish Isle and Jabon. I mean, he doesn't die or anything, he escapes, but part of me also just wanted to talk about this section of the game, which I've always found really memorable, and I always look forward to it when I'm replaying Wind Waker. You guys get my point. I gotta get better at structuring these, I don't know what to call them, different kinds of videos, but this one just felt like a fun idea, and it's something I wanted to cover. Just an excuse to talk about the Dragon Roost Isle theme, honestly. But as always, I hope you guys found this video at least somewhat entertaining or informative, or maybe both. And if you liked it, please like it. If you disliked it, please dislike it. And if you like hearing me ramble on about random video game stuff and the occasional TV show or two, then please consider subscribing. We recently cracked the 15K, which I was really happy about. My Ganondorf video blew up bigger than I ever could have expected. I'm really proud of that one, because for once it's actually a video that I worked really hard on that blows up, unlike my Odin one, which still my most viewed video, but probably one of the ones I put the least amount of time in because I just wanted to talk about Odin's portrayal. I don't even think I had beaten the game yet at that point. Anyway though, leave it to me to ramble on at the end of a video. Let's get to our outro and some final thoughts about these events in Wind Waker. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the soundtrack of this game always stuck with me, and I guess this video was just a way of, well, like I said earlier, just an excuse that I can talk about specific songs from the soundtrack, while still, like, you know, analyzing lore elements or whatever, blah, blah, blah. You guys know. Anyway, though, we've got a lot of good stuff coming, as I always say. Some Fallout stuff is on the horizon. I might wait till the show comes out, or at least till the show gets announced before I start covering some stuff from the Fallout games, because I have another big predictions video for that Fallout series, because again, I'm a big fan of Walton Goggins, and I know he's like a main star of it as far as we know, so that could be good, you know, Uncle Baby Billy and all that. But yeah, I'll stop rambling. You guys have a good one. I will see you next time with another fascinating lore entry from the Honored Madman.